Let's look at their handiwork. Let's ask them, have their policies succeeded? Do we have a better reality? No. What do we have? We have Serbia, a quasi-mafia state, selling weapons to Iraq, with war criminals as much a part of the government and organized crime as the ruling establishment. We have Serbia that's failed to come to grips with what it's done over the last 10 years. And we have a government that's failed to ask Serbia to denazify and reform. We have Montenegro that we pushed, to stay together with Serbia. And we know what the reality of Albanians are there, and we know it's a very weak state. We have Macedonia. Has the Ohrid Agreement worked? Has it? I mean, I haven't seen massive progress. Have you seen massive progress in Macedonia? I haven't. I've heard the illusion of progress. I've heard that we passed a lot of laws, but there's been no implementation that really matters. We have Kosovo. We have 70% unemployment, no access to World Bank loans and lending and anything that would help put Kosovo on the track that it definitely wants to take. We're nearing the point where we might see real deprivation. The diaspora can't hold it forever. We have a very, very bad picture here. And we have Western Europe divided, not willing to do the right thing. And why? Because everything that's happened here has been predicated on one idea after the war, which is we should have, as you all know here, we should have granted Kosovo its sovereignty. We should have told Serbia to go packing, and we should have integrated Kosovo into the Balkans with the condition that respect for minority rights happen. But we didn't do that, and we're delaying it indefinitely, and we're using standards before status as an excuse not to do anything. Now let's go to Western Europe in this story, together with the United States, and the reality that we face because Kosovo's independence isn't being recognized. And that is, I guess this is the hardest part for me. In post-war Kosovo, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel strongly. The worst reality is that the United States and Europe, with the help of Serbia and Greece, have created a false parity in the eyes of the world between state-sponsored terrorism in Serbia and the Kosovo Liberation Army. And today we have the strongest effort to criminalize the Kosovo Liberation Army on the one hand, and we have one of the largest anti-Albanian propaganda machines operating that I've seen since war's end. And these two things are about to come together when we have the trials of Limaj Musliu and Vala in The Hague, which are coming up. So now the question is, what are we going to do? And we have one other aspect of this, and I'm sure you're all following this. You've all heard the word decentralization, I'm sure. You've all heard the word, canonization. Oh, we don't mean canonization. We're not going to allow that. We're talking about decentralization. And we've seen Belgrade issue its report saying it wants 5 different enclaves, right, in Kosovo. And we've seen Montenegro. Is everyone aware of the plan to decentralize and regionalize Albanian lands in Montenegro? Do we want to ask the question why that's being done by Albanians? I think we better. And then in Macedonia, we have a horrible plan for decentralization that will break the Albanian majority land across the western region, and it will put it into ethnic enclaves, rural enclaves surrounded by Slavic cities. This is the plan that Western Europe and a lot of our State Department has in mind to keep the former Yugoslavia together, so we are still where we were when Mr. Baker started out with his plan. We're doing all the wrong things, all in the name of protecting Serbian sovereignty in this next period. And I want to invite you to think about this. I'm very, very concerned in the diaspora about a few things. And the first thing is something I've heard since 1999, and that is, and we hear this, by the way, all through New York. Maybe you're further along in Detroit, but in New York we hear every day, oh, Kosovo, it's no problem. You don't have to worry. Kosovo's free. It's going to have its independence. Have another cup of coffee. So you don't have to worry. No, we really have to talk about Macedonia, and we really have to talk about Montenegro, and we really have to talk about Preševa, and we really have to talk about Chumria. Well, I talk about Albanians in those places every day and every week. But when are we going to wake up and understand that none of the reality, I mean, the ability to give economic and social and political equality to Albanians throughout the Balkans, I mean, it's simply absurd if we think we can talk about that without having an independent Kosovo. I'm very concerned that for the first time in the diaspora we have people who are willing to sit by and collaborate with the very forces in our government that do not support the independence of Kosovo now. I'm very concerned that we have House Resolution 28, and this is, you know, the first and only legitimate vehicle or legitimate piece of legislation that we can use to our advantage, and we have people in our community that don't want to support it. I think we have to look at the fact and ask ourselves, why is it that every time we have a call for weapons, people can't rush fast enough to knock each other over to get up and support that effort? But when it comes to doing what I'm talking about now, which is to face the reality that we have to change the dynamics in the West and we have to stop just talking within the community, changing everything about how the Albanian world is perceived, there's a lack of interest, enthusiasm, and energy on the part of too many people, fortunately, and not on the part of everyone. I think we have to think about these things, and I just want to go back to when you look at the history of the Civic League, please don't take it for granted. Arvin Jafari said a few years ago that the Civic League was the beginning of the diplomatic effort in the 21st century, or the late 20th century, I should say, on behalf of the Albanian national cause. Whether you like Joe DioGuardi or not, you don't have to. Whether you like me or not, you don't have to. Whether you like the members of our board or not, and you don't have to. We still have a mechanism through Joe to have the same privileges as any sitting member of Congress and access to Washington. And I think if you look at what we've done, we have done a very, very good job with what we have to work with. I think we've made a tremendous difference, and there are two things that I think you know about. One, we prevented Učića from being criminalized in March 1998 at a very historic hearing when we got the members of Congress to face off Gelbard and tell him no, KLA has not been criminalized, is not on the U.S. list. That was a very important moment. We were close to being in a position where none of the weapons would have gone through, and at that point the weapons were necessary. They were necessary to defend the Albanian people. Civic League is responsible for that. Civic League is also responsible and one of the major actors in bringing Milosevic to The Hague. I know, because I worked with the lawyers and prepared the report that made the difference. We are responsible for House Resolution 28. We are responsible for the first and the most historic trip of a U.S. official to the Albanian lands in Montenegro. Judge us, please, I hope you will, by what we've done. And if you want to be a part of it, I hope you'll join us, because the last thing that I'm concerned about in the diaspora is an overwhelming concern for Albanian unity. And that concern, while it's laudable and often powerful, it's often used as a mechanism to stop people from acting. Oh, if we're not all together, then we can't possibly do it. It's impossible to have total unity in any group, in any cause. And what we all have to do personally, and I hope we will, is to look inside our hearts and minds and make a decision about where we stand, what we want to do, and stand up and be willing to be judged by that, not to be afraid. Margaret Mead, a very famous American anthropologist, said, "Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. It's the only thing that ever has." Time is running out in Kosovo. Time is running out in the national cause. you can make a difference. The future is in your hands. Hvala mi najlepše, Rob Kosovo.